Okay. Good morning, all of you.
Good morning.
So, we have been discussing about pituitary gland. In the last class, we have seen the structure, divisions, origin, and blood supply to the pituitary gland. Now, we are going to discuss completely the topic related to the hormones of pituitary gland and the disorders associated with its hyperactivity or hypoactivity. Coming to the hormones of pituitary, we can divide this into two types: hormones of anterior pituitary and hormones of posterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary releases seven types of hormones. Actually, there are six types, and these are said to be called as trophic hormones. These are trophic hormones. First one is growth hormone, also called as somatotrophic hormone, or in short as somatotrophin. Thyrotrophic hormone, which stimulates thyroid gland, hence called as thyroid stimulating hormone, in short as thyrotrophin. Adrenocorticotropic hormone or adrenocorticotrophin. Gonadotrophic hormones, which are of two types: follicle stimulating hormone, the same name for both male as well as female; luteinizing hormone in female, and in male it is called as interstitial cell stimulating hormone. And finally, lactogenic hormone, it's having different names. It's also called as prolactin. Lactin, the term lacta means milk, it is related to milk. So it is responsible for synthesis and secretion of milk, hence it is given different names. It is also called as mammotrophic hormones because it stimulates the mammary glands to secrete or initiate milk. Next, it is also called as luteotrophic hormone as it stimulates the luteotrophic cells. In short, we call it as luteotrophin. And in some species, this is also considered as a gonadotrophic hormone. Let us discuss these in detail. First one, I would like to start with growth hormone. Growth hormone is a protein hormone. It has a single straight chain polypeptide structure with two intramolecular disulfide bridges. That means it will be like this: 1 to 195 amino acids with wherever there are cysteine residues that contain sulfur, that can contain sulfur, here it can form two intracellular disulfide bridges. Its molecular weight is 21,500. Excuse me. And the total number of amino acids is 191 in human growth hormone. And recently, a scientist, not recently, a few years back, he isolated the human growth hormone. He suggests that it is made up of 256 amino acids. But as per book, this is the one. Because it is purely a protein hormone, as it is not a glycoprotein, no carbohydrates are associated with this molecule. There are two types of these hormone. One is a hormone, growth hormone, whose molecular weight is 20,000 daltons, and it constitutes 10% of the total growth hormone in secretion. Whereas the second one is having a molecular weight of 22,000, and it is the main hormone which constitutes 90% of the total growth hormone that is present being circulated in the blood. Coming to its synthesis, any hormone is synthesized first as pre-pro hormone, then it is broken down to release prohormone, and finally again broken down to release hormone. Likewise, here also it is synthesized as a pre-pro hormone, sorry, a prohormone, and this is synthesized in rough endoplasmic reticulum. From there it goes to Golgi apparatus. Further processing, that means removing certain amino acids so that it becomes the active hormone, and this comprises of 191 amino acids. From this entire part takes place in Golgi complex, where the hormone is packed and stored in somatotrophic cells until they are stimulated by a releasing hormone from hypothalamus. Coming to the regulation of growth hormone secretion. The secretion of growth hormone is said to be regulated by the hormone released from the hypothalamus. This is called as a releasing hormone because it stimulates the secretion or regulates the secretion of growth hormone by the somatotrophic cells. It is called as growth hormone releasing hormone. And this growth hormone releasing hormone also exists in alternate form, that is growth hormone inhibitory hormone. This growth hormone inhibitory hormone is called as somatostatin. So growth hormone is of two types, we can say, with respect to its activity: growth hormone A and growth hormone I. This is active and this is inactive. Why this is so? Because growth is not a one time process, it is a continuous process. Sometimes the body has to grow and sometimes it has to pause. So thus these things are said to be carried out by these two different kinds of growth hormones. Okay, and coming to the stimuli which increase growth hormone secretion. So, in us, growth hormone can be stimulated by decrease in the blood glucose level. Whenever the blood glucose level decreases, growth hormone increases. So, this is called as hypo means decrease, glycemia means blood glucose level. And another one, that is 2-deoxyglucose, also stimulates growth hormone secretion, followed by exercise, fasting, protein meal, and infusion of amino acids, especially arginine and another hormone called as glucagon, pyrogen, and amino acids like lysine, and finally the posterior pituitary hormone vasopressin also induces the secretion of little amounts of growth hormone. Coming to the mechanism of action, we have already discussed it during signal transduction. Any protein hormone can stay only on the outside of the plasma membrane because it is larger in size. So, this has to be accepted by a receptor present on the membrane. So, this protein hormone is binding with or binds with a cell surface receptor or membrane receptor. Thus, a ligand receptor complex is formed. And this receptor is a tyrosine kinase associated receptor. It's and this is followed by what we call signal transduction. which utilizes the JAK-STAT pathway. So we have already discussed about it. In this, what happens is Janus kinase is a protein which phosphorylates signal transducers and activates transcription for proteins such as STAT that causes phosphorylation of insulin substrate and further activates intracellular enzymatic activity for hormone action. So, because this is directly linked to enzyme linked receptor, here the intracellular enzyme activity is directly activated. Via this JAK-STAT pathway, growth hormone is responsible for stimulating the production of insulin like growth factor 1. It stimulates the production of insulin like growth factor 1, which is also known as somatomedin C in the liver. And this is the principal site of insulin growth hormone factor 1 production. Where it is produced? It is produced in the liver. And this is homologous to insulin. What is homologous? IGF-1 exhibits structural similarity to insulin. That is why we are saying here it causes phosphorylation of insulin substrate. So the substrate on which insulin acts is also acted by IGF-1. So here it has growth stimulating effects on wide variety of tissues. At the same time, this also exhibits stimulatory effects on osteoblasts and chondrocyte activity, which are required for bone growth and also cartilage growth. So, what you have to remember here is three things. Here, the first thing is it is associated with, or this ligand growth hormone forms a ligand receptor complex with an enzyme linked receptor called as tyrosine kinase associated receptor. Second thing you have to remember is it follows the JAK-STAT pathway. Third thing you have to remember is the action of the growth hormone is mediated by another growth factor called as somatomedin C. These are the three things you have to remember. What the scientists found is there is a person where growth hormone secretion is said to be normal, but still he is having a stunted growth. He is still a dwarf. Why this is so? Excuse me. When they have started what you call uh, research on this aspect, they have found that that person is having a genetic abnormality related to the synthesis of somatomedin C. So, though growth hormone is present, the action of which is mediated by somatomedin C, if this is said to be absent, growth will not take place. That is why we say somatomedin C is as important as this hormone. In addition to the JAK-STAT pathway, the ligand receptor or hormone receptor, that means growth hormone receptor complex, also stimulates phospholipase C activity, phospholipase C activity, producing diacyl glycerol. This diacyl glycerol brings over or initiates influx of calcium ions so that gene transcription in target tissue is stimulated. Why? Because growth requires a number of proteins. So, unless otherwise these proteins are synthesized, growth will not take place. So, there are two pathways. One, where enzymes of the cell are said to be activated so that metabolism is said to be promoted. The other two, gene expression is regulated so that proteins required for growth are produced. So this is the twofold action of growth hormone. Coming to functions of growth hormone, there is no just one part of the body where growth hormone cannot act upon or cannot show its impact. The first one is skeletal growth. It stimulates the multiplication of the epiphyseal cartilage and thus increases the length of the cartilage bones. I'll be explaining you this in detail. Growth hormone exerts some of its effects by binding to receptors and target cells. This is a third pathway via the mitogen activated protein kinase pathway, and it stimulates division and multiplication of chondrocytes of cartilage also. So let me explain this aspect once. Just a second. I'll take one empty slide. Okay. Here, when you see bones, we can simply differentiate them into two types. One are called as long bones, the other is called as membranous bones. Membranous bones. Long bones are said to be also called as cartilaginous bones. Okay, cartilaginous bones. Where the long bones are present, they are present in our hands, that is arms, feet, not just feet, legs, arms, legs, etc. So wherever the bone is said to be long in your body, you can simply say that it is a cartilaginous bone. And membranous bones are small enough. They are present in your hand, in feet, in skull, and certain regions where there are small bones are said to be present. Okay. Now, coming to the structure of a cartilaginous bone. A cartilaginous bone shows a structure similar to this. Okay. This part, which is shaft, is called as diaphysis. Diaphysis is the shaft of the long bone, and these regions are called as epiphysis. SIS singular, SES plural. Epiphysis. Okay. You know about the Haversian system and all. I'm not going into the details of this bone marrow and Haversian system. We are not touching here. What actually happens is bone has three different types of cells. One is called as osteoblast. Second one, osteoclast. Third one, osteocyte. Okay. What is the difference between these three? Osteocyte is considered as the structural unit of bone. It is the structural unit of bone. Osteoblast is nothing but the cell which is involved in the formation of bone, and the osteoclast is responsible for the opposite action of osteoblast, that is deformation. Okay, this cell forms the bone, this cell breaks down the bone contents. And during formation, how the formation of bone takes place? It takes place by a process called as calcification. Our bones are strong because they are made up of calcium. This calcium exists in two types of what we call chemical constituents. One as calcium phosphate, the other as calcium carbonate. Of this, mostly 85% is phosphate and the 15% is said to be carbonate form. And deposition of these two salts is what we call it as calcification, or in other words, we also can call it as mineralization, which results in the formation of bone. Hope you are following. I'm going slowly for you to write down and understand it. Now, in long bone, we are concerned with the long bone. What happens is, in a long bone, first of all, this is the bone, let us say it has to elongate. Okay, first of all, this entire thing already has been calcified. Now I'm only explaining you the growth of the bone, how it grows. Now, first of all, cartilage is deposited in a long bone. What first is deposited? It is the cartilage that is deposited. After the cartilage is deposited, the osteoblastic cells, which are present here, these are responsible for calcification. They're responsible for calcification. That means deposition of calcium salts. So that the cartilage is replaced by bony part. Okay. Now then what happens? After that, this entire thing is said to be deposited with bone now up to this length. Okay. Now cartilage is again formed. Cartilage is again formed, and again osteoblasts are responsible for calcification. So this one is also filled, and now here this is also becomes the bony part. Thus the length of the bone, which is this much, now increases to this much. This happens until 20 years of age. This happens until 20 years of age. After 20 years of age, what happens? After 20 years of age, here, during the growth of the bone, when you observe between the epiphysis and actual bone, there is always a region where the cartilage is said to be deposited. Thus, epiphysis is separated from diaphysis during growth phase. During growth, after you attain 20 years of age, what happens is there is no more deposition of cartilage. There is no more deposition of cartilage. Now, what happens when there is no more deposition of cartilage? Epiphysis and diaphysis are together. So, this condition you term it as epiphysis fuses with diaphysis. Epiphysis fuses with diaphysis. If that is so, what happens? There is no further growth of the long bone. And after 20 years, you cannot grow in height only because of the fact that epiphysis fuses with diaphysis. Because these bones are said to be first formed with cartilage followed by calcification. These are called as cartilaginous bones. So all long bones are cartilaginous, whereas other small bones that are present in your hand, that means fingers, palm, feet, and skull, there the deposition of calcium salts, that is calcification, is direct without cartilage. Hence, we say that they are said to be smaller enough. And the second one is it regulates general body growth. So, for growth, we require tissues and muscles also. So, growth of tissues and muscles is said to be promoted by growth hormone. And the third one is metabolism. Growth also requires energy. So growth hormone also controls, in addition to insulin, we know that insulin and glucagon responsible for regulating the carbohydrate metabolism. But here, even in the absence of growth hormone, there is diabetes occurring. That is, we call it as pituitary diabetes. Pituitary diabetes. Why? Because here it simulates the, or it regulates the blood sugar metabolism. So here, when growth hormone is present, blood sugar level increases, leading to hyperglycemia. Thus, there is a reduced sugar tolerance, and they may present with glycosuria, and this is increasing basal metabolic rate and also sweating. So, all these are said to be part of growth. Okay. Next thing is protein metabolism. Growth hormone increases nucleic acid synthesis, protein synthesis. It decreases nitrogen excretion in the urine. Why it decreases nitrogen excretion in the urine? Because it has to promote protein synthesis. Because it has to promote protein synthesis requires amino acids. Amino acid is said to be formed of, as the name implies, amino NH2 group, nitrogen. It decreases also nitrogen excretion in the urine, and the nitrogen thus retained helps in the synthesis of the tissue protein. Actually, this hormone is said to be called as a protein anabolic hormone. Why it is protein anabolic hormone? Because it stimulates the production of proteins. So it is a protein anabolic hormone. Anabolism means synthesis. So it prevents catabolism of amino acids and promotes anabolism of proteins. It diminishes the amino acid content of the plasma by transferring it into the tissue so that proteins are synthesized and growth of the tissue takes place. It also transports the amino acids across the cell membrane and also helps in synthesis of proteins. It increases the rate of incorporation of gamma aminobutyric acid, which is responsible for inhibiting the synaptic activity in some cases, and the same is said to be required even for the glucose transport. And there is also increased serum alkaline phosphatase, which also promotes protein synthesis at the same time growth of the bone. And coming to the impact on liver, growth hormone increases synthesis by protein synthesis by modifying the activity of ribosomes in the translocation of mRNA, and also produces marked increase in liver RNA synthesis and content. Thus, eventually, growth hormone stimulates liver cell division and increases overall hepatic size. So, because it promotes the mRNA synthesis and promotes modifying the activity of ribosomes, thereby promoting the protein synthesis and finally stimulating the division of the hepatocytes of the liver. It increases the overall size of the liver. Okay, and this action, growth hormone requires insulin in support. So along with insulin, it does this function. So as you are growing, every organ has to grow, and liver is the most important organ of a body, and the growth of the liver also is said to be under the control of growth hormone. And coming to the carbohydrate metabolism, the primary effect of growth hormone is to stimulate the storage of glucose. Whenever the blood glucose level, we have seen that it increases the blood glucose level. Growth hormone increases the blood glucose level. So whenever the blood glucose level increases, what happens? Beta cells produce insulin to decrease the blood glucose level, and thus it finally exhausts and it completely gets atrophied. That is the reason why growth hormone, as I have said before, it is diabetogenic, resulting in pituitary diabetes, especially in males than females. Second thing is growth hormone along with adrenocorticotropic hormone increases gluconeogenesis. What is gluconeogenesis? Production of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources like protein. So protein has a number of amino acids, isn't it? Some of these amino acids are called as glucogenic amino acids. So these glucogenic amino acids, as the name implies, they can produce glucose. So these are said to be promoted to produce glucose whenever the body requires it. This process is called as conversion of proteins, non-carbohydrate sources to glucose is called as gluconeogenesis, and growth hormone is responsible for gluconeogenesis. At the same time, the rate of oxidation of glucose is said to be diminished so that it promotes growth. Coming to the fat metabolism, growth hormone causes mobilization of peripheral fat depot to the liver. The mobilized fat is transported in the plasma as NEPA, non-esterified fatty acid. In human subjects, plasma level of NEPA increases 2 to 3 times after administration of 1 to 2 milligrams of primate growth hormone. The alteration of fat metabolism is one of the primary effects of growth hormone. Increased oxidation of fat decreases catabolism of amino acids, causing utilization of amino acids in the synthesis of protein. So, what actually this effect of growth hormone on fat metabolism is that here we have fat stored in adipocytes. Okay, even if you take excess glucose is said to be stored in liver and muscle. If they are said to be completely filled, and even you are taking glucose in abundance, now this is converted to even to fat. So whatever the fat that you take directly and also the glucose that you take directly is converted into fat, and that goes into adipocytes where this is said to be stored. Whenever the body requires them, these adipocytes, which store fat in the form of triglycerides, they are said to be broken down to release fatty acids and glycerol, and they are said to be mobilized to liver, where here in the cells, fats are said to be oxidized to release energy. The energy that is released by fatty acid oxidation is more than that of the energy released by the oxidation of either carbohydrates or amino acids. So, as the body utilizes fats for the energy release, here it is the amino acids which are spared so that amino acid oxidation will not take place, and it promotes the growth of the tissues by the synthesis of proteins. So, thus, in order to spare amino acids, fat metabolism is also regulated. Coming to the disorders, acidophils are the cells which secrete all these trophic hormones. There are two types of dysfunctions. One is low secretion. We call it as low secretion. We call it as hypoactivity. The other is called as more secretion, called as hyperactivity. Hyperactivity leads to acromegaly in children, acromegaly in adults and gigantism in children. Right down. Hy- Hyperactivity of eosinophil cells or growth hormone, you can say hyperactivity of growth hormone leads to acromegaly in adults and gigantism in children. Coming to its low secretion, hypoactivity leads to dwarfism. There are three types of dwarfism. One is, these are discovered by different scientists and their names were given here. Lauren Levy type, Brissot type, and the third one is mixed type. The mixed type in adults, if the growth hormone is hypoactive in adults, it leads to a condition called as acromicria. But it is a rare disorder in human beings. Coming to the first one, gigantism. It is caused by the hyperactivity of the somatotrophic cells, which are part of acidophil cells in the young, I means in the children. Its characteristics are thus: one is these persons are very tall, 7 to 8 feet. Why? Because in children, the diaphyses do not fuse with epiphysis because always there is a cartilage here. So it promotes growth. As it promotes growth, the bones length of the bone increases. So your legs will be long, your hands will be long, and you will be taller. And this condition is called as gigantism. At the same time, the muscles are also under the control of growth hormone and also your visceral organs, internal organs. For example, we have seen liver increases in size with respect to the release of growth hormone. So when it is hyper, it is more in quantity. Even all the visceral organs and muscles increase proportionately so that your body becomes large and gigantic. It has impact on metabolism also. They present with hyperglycemia, reduced sugar tolerance, and may be having glycosuria, as we have discussed before. The second thing is acromegaly. So, in children, what happened? There is bone growth. In adults, the epiphysis fuses with the diaphysis. That means there is no cartilage here. This entire thing is said to be calcified. So when it is entire thing is calcified, there is no more bone growth of long bones. Of long bones. So calcification cannot take place once the epiphysis fuse with the diaphysis in long bones. But we have membranous bones where they are present: hands, feet, jaws, and some of the skeletal, sorry, cranial bones. Okay, cranium. So all these are said to be affected by growth hormone in adult. So coming to its impacts, characteristic features of acromegaly. There is overgrowth of the two jaws, the malar bones, the supraorbital ridges, and enlargement of hands and feet. Hands and feet are called as terminal parts of the body, acral parts of the body. So acral parts are increased. Mega means large. Acral parts are said to be increased in size, hence we call it as acromegaly. And as the in addition to this, another characteristic feature is bowing of the spine. The spine which should be straight, it somehow bow bow shaped, and this is called as kyphosis. This is another feature of acromegaly. The anteroposterior diameter, the chest, this is the chest. The anteroposterior diameter of the chest increases. The skeletal changes lead to gorilla-like appearance of the patient, which we call them as acromegaly. So acromegaly is the condition where your hands and feet are said to be very large sized. That means you cannot have normal shoes, normal socks, normal gloves. You have to get them manufactured with respect to the size of your hand and feet. That is the impact growth hormone is having in adults. In addition to this, it has impact on subcutaneous tissue, metabolism, and visceral organs, which are also enlarged. Okay, and other endocrine glands like thyroid is said to be enlarged in acromegaly, and adrenal cortex gets enlarged and becomes hyperactive, and thymus, if at all it is not atrophied in the adult, it also gets enlarged. And coming to the impact on the reproductive functions, they are initially hyperactive and later they also atrophy. There is increased production of lactogenic hormones. In males, there may be diminished libido. What is libido? Libido means sexual potency. Sexual potency is called as libido. When that happens, that individual becomes impotent. In females, it leads to sterility, menstrual disturbances, failure of breast to develop, and persistent lactation because there is increased production of lactogenic hormone. So all these you need not have to remember. What you have to remember is these are the main features what we have to remember. I'll share this PPT with you. You can write down the remaining part of the notes. Important points. Coming to the dwarfism, it is caused by low secretion of the acidophils in the children, in the young people. Three types: Lorraine Levy type, Brissot type, and mixed type. Coming to the Lorraine Levy type, it is also called as infantilism. It shows very short statured people with only 3 feet height. In centimeters, it is 85 centimeters. Thus, these are exhibiting dwarfism or stunted growth. And sex organs and secondary sexual characters are said to be do not grow, and hence adult man resembles a normal child. Intelligence is normal and proportional to age. There is no depth of the knowledge, decrease in the knowledge. It is also same, and metabolism also is same. The only thing is that the growth is said to be stunted. Coming to the Brissot type, it is also called as fat body of Dickens. Fat body of Dickens. The same features of Lorraine Lavie type are also seen in Brissot type. All these features are present in Brissot type. In addition to this, the name implies that there is excess deposition of fat in the body, so that the face becomes chubby and round. In addition to this, there is no beard developing, there is no mustache, and becomes more lethargic and sluggish or slothful in nature. So, what you have to remember is Brissot type shows the same characteristic features of stunted growth. Dwarfism is there. In addition to this, there is excess deposition of fat. These two things you have to remember. And the third one is mixed type. There are mixed histological nature and have the combined clinical manifestations, and this is called as dispituitarism. So all these constitute dispituitarism. The individual suffering from this may be fat, is having excess deposition of fat like Brissot type, and it is hairless. That means no beard, no mustache. In addition to this, the body of this male is not having any hairs at all, and it may have large accessory nasal sinuses, prominent ridges. Supraorbital ridges are your eyebrows. Those regions are said to be prominent, and other characteristic features that are seen in acromegaly. In some, dysfunction of eosinophil cells may develop pressure symptoms on neighboring structures and behaves like patient of dysfunction of chromophobe cells also. Okay, thus, actually, hyperpituitarism leads to acromegaly or gigantism because it is having an impact in adjacent cells. It is also showing what we call in hypopituitarism, where actually gigantism and acromegaly should not be associated with, but these are associated as it is having impact on the neighboring tissues. That is the reason why we call this as mixed type. Okay, and in addition to this, there is another disease called as acromicria, which we have already seen in the previous slides. It is caused by the hypoactivity of the acidophil cells in the adult during mixed type of this dwarfism. It is antithesis of acromegaly. That means it is opposite to acromegaly, where the bones of face, that means skull, hands, feet, are becoming very small. In acromegaly, they are large in size. Now, opposite to that, it is said to be very small in size, but it is found to be a very rare clinical condition. And the second hormone is thyrotrophic hormone, and it is a glycoprotein mainly responsible for the secretion of thyroid hormones. It is secreted by thyrotrophic cells of anterior pituitary, molecular weight 25,000. Because it is a protein hormone with carbohydrate moiety, this protein is said to be having made up of two subunits, alpha chain and beta chain. The alpha chain consists of 96 amino acids and beta chain consists of 110 amino acids. Thus, around there are 206 amino acids in this particular hormone. And thyroid stimulating hormone, coming to its mechanism of action, it acts through the mediation of cyclic AMP, and this is said to be having an impact on follicular cells. What are follicular cells? We will discuss when we will discuss with the about the thyroid gland in the next class. And this hormone, as the name implies, it stimulates the growth and functional activities of the thyroid gland. So whatever the thyroid gland is having impact on your body is said to be first stimulated by the thyroid stimulating hormone. Without TSH, thyroid gland cannot release thyroxine, and there is no general body growth and other impacts of this thyroxine. Okay, coming to the thyroid stimulating hormones control. Thyrotropic secretion is under the control of hypothalamus and thyroxine level in the blood. So here, like growth hormone releasing hormone is there, there is thyroid stimulating hormone releasing hormone released from the hypothalamus, which stimulates the pituitary gland, so that it releases the thyroid stimulating hormone. Now this stimulates thyroid gland to secrete thyroxine or T4. So whenever the thyroxine levels increase, now it shows a negative effect on the cells of the hypothalamus, so that the releasing hormone levels are decreased. So whenever it increases, this is decreased, so that this is decreased, and finally T4 secretion is decreased. And such a feedback is called as negative feedback mechanism. So by negative feedback mechanism, where its own hormone concentration decreases its concentration, is called as, is said to be the way the thyroid stimulating hormone is to be controlled. Okay, this is the central nervous system, that is hypothalamus, from where what we call positive and negative impulses can come. And hypothalamus, when it is induced, it produces thyroid stimulating hormone releasing hormone, which stimulates pars distalis or pars anterior of pituitary, so that thyroid stimulating hormone is released, and this stimulates thyroid gland, and that secretes the what we call thyroxine hormone. When the thyroxine hormone levels increase, they show a negative feedback impact, so that it is T4 secretion is inhibited. And the third hormone is adrenocorticotropic hormone. So as the name simply says, this hormone stimulates the cortical cells, cortex of adrenal gland. This is also a polypeptide hormone like growth hormone, consists of 13 amino acids with a molecular weight of 4500. And thus individuals with ACTH are said to be, when it is hyperactive, they exhibit what we call a condition called as bronzing effect. What is bronzing effect? The skin becomes more pigmented, melanized. Why? Scientists found that the structure of ACTH somewhat similar to melanocyte stimulating hormone. That is the reason why its increased level is having an impact that of the increased level of melanocyte stimulating hormone. When melanocyte stimulating hormone levels increase, what happens? Melanin deposition takes place, bronzing of skin may take place, and this is one condition where you can see this what we call impact on the adrenal cortex. Coming to its synthesis, it is synthesized as a pre-pro hormone in the corticotrophic cells. This larger molecule, pro-opiomelanocortin, cleaves to form acid adrenocortical trophic hormone, followed by beta lipotopin, of which only ACTH is having hormone action. And its action is mediated by cyclic AMP. And coming finally to the gonadotrophic hormones, which are of two types, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Hope we have already discussed about this during what we call about FSH, LH, and lactogenic hormone or prolactin. We have discussed about this during the hormone control of reproduction in females. So I'll be stopping this class here. I'll be sharing this PPT once the other hormones are also completed. You go through the FSH and LH and prolactin functions and compare this with the previous class. And if you have any doubts, then ask me. Otherwise, I'm not going to deal with in order to save time. So after this, in the evening session, we'll discuss about the what we call um, posterior pituitary hormones and disorders associated with the total dysfunction of the pituitary, and also dysfunction of chromophobe cells, which are non-secretory in nature. So those things we are going to deal with in the evening class. Okay. So because I have some other work which was assigned to me suddenly in the late in the evening, I had to call for this class early in the morning. Sorry for the change of timing. So evening we'll meet again at 8 p.m. There is no change of time. Thank you. We'll meet in the evening.
Thank you, sir.